Hey all you cool cats and kaijus, are you looking for the hottest beachfront karaoke club this side of the Pacific? Look no further than King Caesar's Kaiju karaoke joint. It's where all the hippest monsters go to boogie all night and the karaoke machine plays only one song. Come grab a drink and get down with the slickest beasts around at King Caesar's Kaiju karaoke joint. And for all you foxy mamagons out there, Wednesday nights are ladies' nights, which means no cover charge for all you funky Mothras and Biolante ladies out there. King Caesar's Kaiju karaoke joint, the hottest spot this side of the Pacific.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Kaju Weekly, the weekly podcast that introduces you to the wide world of giant monster movies. I am your host, Travis, and with me, as always, is Michael.
Hey guys, how are you all doing?
Oh man, we're tired.
We were just talking on the back channel here a few seconds ago. And I think both of us got in a well-deserved nap, and hopefully I didn't get sunburnt in the process.
Yeah, that's you're gonna be feeling that tomorrow.
Oh, I'm sure I'll be feeling it tonight when I go to bed.
Oh yeah, probably. Well, we've got a pretty packed episode this week, so we're going to hop right into the news.
Cue the beady beady.
Cue the beady beady. The first bit of news is a follow-up to last week's episode that me and Elijah did. The entire episode was about the books, the art book and the children's book for Godzilla vs. Kong getting delayed. And does that mean that the movie is delayed? And what would it mean for the fandom if the movie got delayed? And within an hour after recording that episode, the dates for the book releases got switched back to November.
Right. Yeah, I saw. Yeah. Whenever I listened to y'all's conversation, I thought to myself, "Oh, yeah, we're gonna have to do a retraction on the next episode."
Yeah, so those two books have been moved back to November, the release dates for them. So here's my question. Did the internet overreact?
The internet always overreacts.
Correct answer.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. The internet will always overreact, even if it's the most minor thing about a book being pushed back.
Yeah. Now, does this mean that the movie won't get delayed again? Not exactly, because there's still a good chance that the movie is going to get delayed again.
Yeah, I think there is. I honestly think that the movie will be pushed back because November is just so jam-packed. Forgive me, everyone out there who's a little bit more optimistic than I am. I just don't see how Godzilla versus Kong can make any money when it's stacked up against, like, I want to say like 15 other movies.
Right. Yeah, because at the time that they moved it to November, there wasn't anything. Now there's a lot of things getting moved to November because of the coronavirus. So it's like, it is very possible that they move it again. And it's very possible that they are going to move the release dates for these books and someone jumped the gun and did it before they were ready to announce that they were moving it. But still, I think even me and Elijah were talking about how everyone needs to just keep a level head and remember that this is a movie And if the release
Yeah.
date gets pushed back, yeah, we're gonna be upset because, man, I really want to see that movie too. But remember, it's just a movie.
Right. I think the going consensus now within the fandom is anyway that regardless of when they put it out, they're going to get all of our monies anyway. So, and I think you and Elijah brought up a really good point. I just, where they've not done a whole lot of marketing for this film, it's actually kind of worked in their favor because now they don't have to issue this huge retraction of saying, "Oh, well, it was set for November, but we're going to push it to January or February."
Right.
I just don't think that. I don't think. Okay, let me back up. I think because we live in this sort of kaiju, Godzilla, Kong, MonsterVerse bubble that we all know about the film coming, but I don't know if the normies do. So I just don't think it's going to have a huge impact. They're going to, and I'm sure they've already done the data analysis of when they feel like the most profitable month is going to be, and they're going to move it to whatever month they know they can at least make their money back. Now, as for Elijah's theory that if Godzilla versus Kong does not do well, that's the end of the MonsterVerse, at least in the West. I don't know about that. I honestly don't know, because I've noticed that Toho is doing a lot of collaboration lately, and they've really been a little bit more generous with their licenses than they have been in the past. So I can see a situation where they possibly do an ongoing collaboration with studios in the West. But that still remains to be seen. Who knows? If Godzilla versus Kong is a huge flop, which I don't think it's going to be. Don't take me out of context. I do not think it's going to flop. I really don't even think it's going to underperform. I think that it's going to perform fairly well. Because you've got the name recognition of Godzilla, you've got the popularity in the West from King Kong, and I just don't think that movie is going to do as badly as I've heard people say. And I don't think that its success or failure is going to be the death nail, so to speak, for the MonsterVerse as we know it.
Yeah. Well, I think that it will be the death nail for the MonsterVerse Legendary thing, because I think if this thing underperforms, Legendary and WB are going to be like, okay, this is not profitable. We're pulling the plug on it. Now, do I think that it's the end of Godzilla in the West?
Oh God, no.
I mean, if movies underperforming were the doom for Godzilla, we wouldn't still have Godzilla in America right now.
Right.
Like, he still wouldn't be a recognizable character.
Right.
So, but yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things that we just have to wait and see.
Right. And we're going to debate about it for the next several months anyway. I'll be honest with you. It makes for a really interesting conversation, but I'm kind of over it right now. Like, I'm kind of over having the same conversation over and over and over. Let's just, like you said, let's just wait and see, because they're going to get my money regardless. They're going to get yours. I'm sure they're going to get thousands of other people's money as well. So let's just wait and see. But of course, the internet has to freak out over the most minute thing. So yeah. That's where we're kind of at.
Yeah. And to be fair, like, there's a majority of the fans were just like disappointed, like us.
Right.
We're, the idea of it moving, we're disappointed, but whatever they have to do, as long as we get to see the movie eventually. We're talking about the fans, the quote unquote fans that were like, well, if it's delayed again, I'm not going to support it, or, sending death threats or things like that. Like that kind of stuff. Like you said, the internet always overreacts.
That's just the nature of the internet. I feel like the internet was created just for people to overreact about something.
Yeah. Moving on to the next bit of news. The full specs for the Arrow Gamera set have been released. Finally.
Yeah. Yes.
So we have up to this point we have had a lot of the features shared with us online, and we've seen it. So we've known a lot about what's in the set, but the full specs have not been released up until now. So looking at the full specs and the list of things, what are some of the things that have piqued your interest, Michael?
4K resolution, 4K transfers of the Heisei series is a huge sell.
Mhm.
Also, comment. I mean, there's just going to be so much, because I think we're getting the Japanese and the English dub of all the Showa era films and the Heisei films as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I don't know about English dubs for the Heisei, but I do know for the Showa, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So it's great.
Yeah, we haven't seen that. I don't believe we've seen that since even Mill Creek put out their set. I think it was like 2013, 2014, something like that. It's the one that goes on. It's the one online that goes for stupid money now. It's like, it's
right.
200. Yeah. But yeah, I'm super excited for the 4K transfers of the Heisei trilogy. I don't think they're going to do 4K, or they're going to be able to do 4K for the Heisei series, or I'm sorry, for the Showa series. But I anticipate us getting at least some really nice transfers on the Showa films. Because the Mill Creek releases, for example, when we did Kaiju Quarantine a couple weeks ago, or last weekend, I believe Rob even confirmed that was the Mill Creek transfer of Gamera versus Giron, and it looked really good. That is really good quality. So if Arrow is able to do even slightly better than that, it's going to be even the Showa films are going to look fantastic. Couple of things that I'm looking forward to are the commentary by Matt Frank and the godfather, I would say, of Kaiju podcasting, Kyle Yount. He's also going to be doing some commentary for the Gamera set. I think the new comic that's drawn by Matt Frank is going to be included, and an illustrated book or a photo book that goes through the history of Gamera and the making of Gamera. I love behind the scenes photos. Like, I love those. I have a few of those Toho special effects books where they highlight a different kaiju and they show you the effects, the suits, all the stuff that went into creating that specific kaiju in that film. And I love stuff like that. And so I'm super excited to have something like that in my collection. I've already placed my pre-order. I placed my pre-order months ago at this point. I think it was within a week or so it was announced. I went ahead and placed my pre-order, and I am super, super excited.
Yeah. As far as the Showa films, they are not in 4K. You're right.
Right.
It is just high definition,
sure,
1080p transfers. But like you said, we saw just recently one of the Mill Creek high definition transfers of Gamera versus Guiron, and my goodness, that was the crispest I've ever seen that movie look. I have never seen that movie look so crisp.
Oh, me either. Like, you can every now and then you can find a really, really nice transfer of an older film on archive.org. Like the film we're going to be talking about today, I found a really nice transfer of it on Archive, but they're few and far between. Like, you have to have the physical disc or something to watch such a good quality. But I was impressed by what we got to see last weekend with Kaiju Quarantine in that film. And actually, while we were doing the commentary, or I can't even remember who was on there with me, but while I think Chris and Matt from Giant Monster BS, while we were doing the commentary, I was sitting there thinking, man, if this looks good now, I cannot wait for what Arrow is going to be able to give us in July.
Right. Yeah. And the Heisei movies will have the English dub. Okay. I didn't know if they would have English dub. I knew all the Showa ones would have the English dub. I didn't know if the Heisei ones did. I'm looking at the specs now,
which is great. I have the Blu-rays for the Heisei trilogy, and apparently the ones I got I think they're bootlegs. They didn't say bootleg in the description because they're supposed to have the English dub on the
Right.
disc, but they do not.
Ah,
So I was forced to watch the subtitles, which that was back when I got that set. I got those Blu-rays rather when I first started getting into subs. So it was just sort of annoying, but I got used to it over time. And actually now I prefer subs. For most films, I prefer subs, but not all films. Some films are actually better with the dub version. Please don't shoot me.
one thing, a couple of the things that I found interesting about this. So you've got, for a few of the movies, you've got the original Japanese movie with, like we said, with the English dubs, but then you also have the American edit of the movie included on there. So like with Gamera versus Gyaos, you have the high definition transfer of Gamera versus Barugon and Gamera versus Gyaos with lossless original Japanese and dubbed in English and optional English subtitles.
Right.
But you also have a high definition transfer of War of the Monsters, which is the shorter American edit of Gamera versus Barugon with lossless English audio.
Okay.
So that's interesting. So you're getting all of the Gamera films plus some extra films.
Well, let me ask you this. That all sounds fantastic, but does it say anything about us getting the MST3K versions?
No, we are not. Yeah.
Daggone it.
Yeah, actually Elijah himself on Twitter reached out to the project manager. His last name's Flowers. I forget his first name. But over there at Arrow, and the project manager answered him, and Elijah asked, would you ever consider, or was it even in the consideration of adding the Mystery Science Theater 3000 episodes where they reviewed the Gamera movies onto this disc, these discs.
Okay.
And the project manager said that no, they always intended the collection to be 8 discs. They would have had to increase it if they added more, even more movies to it, those ones. And since Shout Factory has the Mystery Science Theater 3000 episodes, they decided to focus mainly on the films themselves, the actual films. So that's what that was his response. So that was, it was nice of him to actually respond to Elijah's question and answer it.
That was super interesting. It doesn't bug me. I just kind of mentioned it as more or less as a joke. I didn't expect Arrow to include the MST3K versions. But
I will say, if you look at the specs, there is, for certain films, not for all of them, but for certain films, there's actually a comedic, what's listed as a comedic dub track or a comedic commentary or spoof commentary. So there will be a Mystery Science Theater 3000 style thing on there, but it's not from Mystery Science Theater 3000. It's something that Arrow put together specifically for these films, and it's going to be an option that you can actually pull up. Yeah, spoof commentary by Gamera and Soldier number 9 for, which one was for this one? Revenge of Iris. And then you have for, I'm trying to see, for Attack of Legion, you had, no, there wasn't ones for Attack of Legion. There was, I know I saw another one that had it, but anyway, yeah. So there's a few ones that had spoof commentary.
Okay. I'm wondering though, because I'm just being speculative at this point, because I remember Kyle Yount mentioning something about doing some kind of characterized commentary for the Gamera set, and I'm wondering if he might be participating in this spoof commentary or something of that effect.
Not really sure. I know he's providing commentary for Legion,
Okay.
but it doesn't have him listed as part of the spoof commentary. But
Okay.
we don't know. Oh yeah, that's what it is. The comedic dub track for it still doesn't say that Kyle Yount is part of it, but there is a comedic one for Attack of Legion.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that's interesting to me. That stuck out to me when I was looking at it. The of course the art, all of the artwork in it, and all of the books, the map. We didn't even talk about. There's a map that comes with it that's going to have it's all over Japan and all of the significant locations, and it's done in Japanese or in English. It's because it's reversible.
Right.
And just, oh man, it looks so good. All of this stuff, all of the artwork in it is so good. It is the bottom line of this, I think, is this set is worth the money that you pay for it.
In fact, I think as of this recording, it is going for, I believe, around $129 and some cent, like basically $130 on Amazon. And my God, I like for all the stuff that they're giving us, even if they just included like the retrospective book and the Matt Frank comic, that's a $200 value, and all the films, of course, that's a $200 value easy. But they're gonna give us the comic, the book, the map, the discs, of course, and the various versions of each film. My God, I mean, this set, I will say, is for the fans. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to sit here and hate on the Criterion Collection because I love the Criterion Collection.
Yeah.
But Toho, I know you listen to this podcast.
Of course.
What the heck were you thinking?
Yeah. Yeah. And if anybody wants to hear people rant about the Toho set, they should tune into Kaiju Quarantine the next time we do, because it always comes up, and Elijah is one of probably the loudest opinions that we have about it, and for good reason. I think the bottom line on that is that Toho was the way. We can't really blame Criterion, because Criterion's hands were kind of tied by what Toho provided for them. So, the movies, the transfers, the ones, the dubs, all of that kind of stuff, that's all on Toho, not on Criterion. But I also think that the fact that Criterion is not necessarily meant for fans of Godzilla, it was more meant for film fans
of Criterion.
Or fans of Criterion play into it too. Whereas, like you said, this is specifically for fans. We mentioned the comic book by Matt Frank, but they also have the Dark Horse comic book.
Really?
So the Gamera comic book, the actual, because Matt Frank's is like a fan comic that he wrote and he drew and everything, and was released in Japan, so it's never been released in America in English. It's finally, with the set, it is getting released. Right. But in the 90s, they did have a Gamera comic book series. It was a mini series from Dark Horse, and that is getting released with this set as well. Yeah, so you're getting two different comic books along with everything else.
Okay. See, now I'll be honest with you. I have not gone through and seen the whole list of specs. Now I know sort of the tentpole specs, like the 4K, the English and Japanese audio for all the films, the main stuff that we knew already. Now I've not gone through and looked at the entire spec sheet, mainly because when I open this set, I want to be surprised what's in there. I want to have that awe moment when I see all of this stuff laid out in front of me, is why I haven't looked at the entire spec sheet. And so you told me that there's a fan comic by Matt Frank and the actual Dark Horse comic by Matt Frank included.
No,
And that
Matt Frank didn't do that one.
I'm sorry. But anyway, yeah,
yeah,
that sounds fantastic. That does.
yeah. Oh yeah, and like I said, the map. That the thing that's drawing me the most is the artwork that's in the book, the comic books, the all of the artwork for each of the discs, the poster,
right.
the map thing that we talked about. All of that is drawing me to it because it's like it looks so much better to me than the Criterion artwork that they used for. And I didn't hate the artwork they used for Criterion, but it's still just, to me, I like this artwork better.
Well, the thing about the Criterion artwork was they contracted I think each movie was done by a different artist. I want to say that no artist did more than one film. So you had 15 different artists doing a poster, their interpretation of the film through their artwork. And that's why it was sort of this mishmash of different art styles. The one that stands out to me the most is I think the Monster Zero artwork where it just looks so stylized. And it's probably my least favorite of the set. Now I appreciate good art for what it is, and I think for the most part all of those pieces are really, really beautifully done, especially the one for, I think it was the film we're going to talk about today, and the Destroy All Monsters artwork I really, really like those. But I think what we've all talked about before, and the Criterion collection was not necessarily for Godzilla fans. It was for Criterion fans, and really, I hate to be the one to admit it because I was so high on the Criterion collection for so long. Really, if you were a Criterion fan, you kind of got screwed too because you really didn't get Criterion quality on a lot of those films.
Right.
And I know a lot of us in this little circle that we get to hang out with, we all have most of us have a copy of the Criterion collection on our shelves, and I know we all appreciate what they tried to do. We just feel like I know we feel a little bit slighted though with this new Gamera set coming because we're like, well, okay, basically Toho gave everybody the shaft on this one, but Daiei and all those and those people are gonna give the fans really what they want, and that's really what it boils down to. This Gamera set is for the fans of Gamera. This set has been a long time coming. I think if you're a Kaiju fan, and you do not sleep on this set, if you can afford this set, go for it because I think you're gonna really love what's in the box. From what I've seen. Now, I've not seen everything. I don't want to see everything because I want to be surprised. I want to have that awe moment when I open the box and find out everything that's in there. But yeah, I mean, this is absolutely for the fans, and it's just really, really good to see Gamera getting what I feel like that series deserves.
Yeah, especially since for the longest time, Gamera was just one of those ones that you had a very hard time finding anything for, especially collections. Like we did when Mill Creek put out the collection. It was unique because it was very hard to find collections of Gamera films. But yeah, that's it. So it's exciting. It's exciting that we're getting this, and so fans, like you said, don't sleep on it. Don't sleep on it because it's definitely worth. It looks like it's worth the money.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that it's going to sell out quickly. It does have high sellout. It does have a very high sellout potential because it is so fantastic. And I know that people, this set's going to appeal to a lot of people. And I feel I don't want to dwell too much longer on it because I feel like at this point we're just doing a big infomercial for Arrow and the Gamera set. But this set appeals to Kaiju fans, science fiction fans, Gamera fans specifically, and even Matt Frank and comic book fans.
Oh yeah, and it's definitely just it's so good. It's so good.
So I hope they have plenty of copies printed. Is all I got to say.
Yeah, for sure. So moving on to the next bit of news, it's going to be a real quick one. The upcoming Kaiju comedy film Three Great Monsters Gourmet has had its premiere slightly delayed. So the film that was originally slated to come out last week is actually now moved the premiere in Japan to June 6th, 2020.
Okay.
We had talked about this film briefly because a trailer came out for it not too long ago, and so we did briefly talk about this. This is the one that has kind of like giant squid looking kaiju.
Yeah, okay.
It looks funny, it looks fun. I know at the time I talked about, I like how in Japan kaiju is a genre that they can play around with and do different things with, whereas giant monster movies tend to all be the same, either horror or action movies in America.
Right.
They have more freedom in Japan to do different things and try different things.
Yeah.
I like when they do comedy films. I like when they do the weird and bizarre films. And this is one of those ones. So I hope it gets an American release, or at least released in a way that we can watch it. But as of right now, the only thing we know is the Japanese release date, which has been moved to June 6th.
I'm sure that, I think it's been a while since you and I talked about it. It's been it's been several episodes back, I believe, since you even brought it up in the notes. And I'm sure that we'll be able to find it somewhere, because the nature of the internet and nothing, it seems like you can find just about anything you want on the internet, good or bad. So I have a feeling that we're going to be able, to find this somewhere, so we can watch it. But if we get an official Western release, then that's just even better.
Yeah. I mean, we at least got, I think, Blu-ray releases for Death Kappa and a few other of those weird kind of left of what I would call left of center kaiju films. So so it would, we probably could get this one over here. It's just a matter of when, because it's just now premiering in Japan in film or in theaters. So it's probably going to be a while before we get it here in the States.
Yeah, I don't see why not.
Yeah. But yeah, that's it for my bit of news. Do you want to quickly go through the news on the side of collectors, because this is more your domain?
It is, and I had a big long list of things that I was going to talk about here, but I'm going to try to keep it as simple and as quick as I possibly can, because I'm really looking forward to getting into the main topic today. I know you and I both have a lot to share there. So basically, I think it was last week. I believe, I want to say, because I didn't put any time, I didn't put any dates on this, so sorry. X Plus, which is the high end figure designer line, X Plus. If anyone's in the collector community, you know what X Plus is anyway, so I don't have to go into detail there. X Plus revealed its new Godzilla 2019 figure. The model is based off of Godzilla's appearance in 2019, in the 2019 film Godzilla King of the Monsters, and is part of their Daikaiju series line of figures, the Daikaiju meaning large monster. The figure will stand approximately 27 centimeters tall, 48 centimeters long, and 18 centimeters wide, which is going to be a chunky boy. The figure comes in two flavors: a standard version sporting a more of a gray, brown, red color scheme, emulating how Godzilla looked at the end of the film after defeating King Ghidorah, and the Rick, which stands for rare, interesting, and collectible. That version sports a darker gray, blue paint application and will feature light up dorsal plates. The standard retails for around $153 USD, while the Rick will sit around $110 USD, depending on where you're able to find him.
210, right?
Yeah, 210. I'm sorry, $210.
Yeah, because the Rick would not be less than the standard.
Yeah, what I say, 100. What I say, 110.
Yeah, you said 110.
My bad. I'm sorry, folks, but yeah, $210 USD for the Rick version, and it's going to be available on. It's already available now for pre-order. I've already got my pre-order in for the standard version. I just love that really brownish red paint application that he looks. A lot of folks online are calling that the aftermath version, sort of like how he looked after he ate King Ghidorah's head. So yeah, it's really, really cool. He's going to be available from online retailers like Awesome Collector, Hobby Search, and direct from the Shonen Rick website. Looks like the release date on that figure is going to be August of 2020. So yeah, I mean, it looks like he looks like a fantastic figure. Like I said, he's going to be for 27 centimeters tall and 18 centimeters wide. He's going to be a chunky boy, a really chunky boy.
Mhm.
Where because the Kaiju series is on average anywhere between 23 centimeters and 25 centimeters tall. So he's going to take up a lot of shelf space, and also looks like X Plus will be coordinating rather with Premium Bandai and reissuing their 30 centimeter Godzilla 1975. Nudge, nudge, wink, wink to what we're going to be talking about today, kind of.
Mhm.
So yeah, that figure will stand about 30 centimeters tall, and will feature a light up gimmick with light up dorsal plates. The release date for that one is set for August, or not August, October. Excuse me. And
October.
is October, not August, and is also available on online retailers like the Rick site, the Japanese Rick site, and rather not the American Rick site, and online retailers like Awesome Collector. Now, originally, this release was intended for Japanese only, but if you know somebody who knows somebody who can get you one, you can get them. I got mine already through Awesome Collector, Jason Welling, who's a really good friend of the community. And so, yeah, I'm pretty excited for that guy. Also, just really quickly, some other notable June releases from X Plus and other companies are going to be the Defo Real Space Godzilla. And if you're not familiar with the Defo Real line, Travis, it's those little short kind of chibi figures with the big heads and the small bodies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Those look really awesome.
They do look really awesome for the price point they're not a bad deal. Typically for a Defo Real, you're going to pay anywhere between $60 to $100. And for a figure that stands about 6 inches tall and is highly detailed like that, and some of them come with really great effects, not too terrible.
Yeah.
Also, let's see, for June, looks like they're going to be doing a release for their Daikaiju series, which is the 25 centimeter line of Red Killer from Return of Ultraman. Looks like Defo Real Burning Godzilla 2019, and also a 25 centimeter Daikaiju Ultraman Leo. So if you're interested in all that stuff that we just talked about, you can find all the detailed information on sites like sci-fijapan.com and kaijubattle.com. And we will make sure to put links to all of that stuff in the description. And once we upload it to YouTube, I'll make sure to post links in the description of that video as well.
Yeah. So everything's it seems like for the collectors out there, it's still going. Like everything else might have been put on hold during the coronavirus, but they're still churning out things.
It's really funny, Travis, because for stuff like this, the United States is really not even the biggest market. And it's weird to say that because typically the United States for toys and things tends to be the largest market. The biggest market for this kind of stuff is Japan, China, and it's oddly enough Canada for some reason. I don't know.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So regions of North America, and it seems like, I mean, don't get me wrong, the United States is up there. I think I was talking with someone who runs who is an actual seller, and I think they told me that maybe the United States runs third in the list of largest buyers of these high-end collectibles. So yeah, I mean, we're up there, but we're nowhere near the top. Japan is, of course, on top.
Oh wow, that's cool. All right, so yeah, that's plenty of news for the Kaiju collectors out there. We're going to make sure to include more of the collector side of things in our news segment because we have Michael here who's an expert on it. I used to leave it out of the notes because I didn't know anything about it. So it's like, I don't know what to say. It's like, oh, this sounds cool. I don't know what Rick is, but now I do because of Michael. So
yes. It's definitely sort of a subculture within the fandom itself, and I thank you, Travis, for calling me an expert. I don't see myself as an expert. I just kind of learn from veteran collectors that I'm a part. Like when I'm in my groups and things, I'm just talking with all kinds of people that have done this way longer and have way bigger collections than I do. So yeah, that's where I get all my information and knowledge from, some of those guys and girls that have been collecting for so long. But thank you. I appreciate
it. Well, okay. So I think that's it for the news segment. So now we can get into our main topic for this week.
All right.
So we are closing out. I know technically this episode is going to be released the first week of June, so we're actually technically already out of Mech Month, but we're actually recording it. It's still May, so it's still Mech Month for us, and because of Kaiju quarantine, it got delayed a week, so that's what's going on. But we are closing out Mech Month with a big one. And the trivia question that I asked last week and the week before, that we posted on the Kaiju GROUPIE Facebook group and all over our social medias was, which Godzilla film caused Universal Studios to file a lawsuit claiming it was too similar to their TV shows The $6 Million Man and The Bionic Woman?
Right.
So some of the answers that we got, my best friend in the whole world, Kershaw, answered with Terror of Mechagodzilla. If I remember correctly, the biologist's daughter was saved and made into a cyborg. That's similar enough to the $6 million man and Bionic Woman. Close Kershaw, but not the right answer. Rick Harner gave us the correct answer. Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, aka Godzilla versus the Cosmic Monster, aka Godzilla versus the Bionic Monster, which is the reason why Universal sued them, because in America it was going to be released under the title Godzilla versus the Bionic Monster, which was too similar, they said, to the Bionic Woman. Dylan Nolan also said Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. Brandon Hurst said that he thought it was Terror of Mechagodzilla since the cyborg girl. So a couple of people, it threw a few people off with it, which is good. I didn't want it to be too easy of a question. Giant Monster BS, our friends over at Giant Monster BS podcast. I know that they know that this is not the correct answer, but they just threw it out there because, like I said, you can give us any answer and we'll give you a shout out. So a big shout out to Giant Monster BS podcast. If you're not listening to them, give them a listen, because they're a great podcast and a great couple of guys over there.
Yep, they have a lot of fun.
Yeah. They said Gojira as it, and then Elijah, another one of our friends who has a Kaiju podcast, Kaiju Conversations. Check him out. He was just a guest on last week, so I'm not going to give him as many plugs because all of his plugs are in last week's episode. Go check out that. Sorry, Elijah. He said Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, aka Godzilla versus the Bionic Monster, aka Godzilla versus the Cosmic Monster. He said also known as Godzilla versus the Multiple Titles. And then Nathan from Monster Island Film Vault podcast, give him a listen too, because he's a great guy. We're actually going to mention Nathan a few times in this episode because we'll get to it. But he listed out Godzilla versus the 650 million yen bionic cyborg, give or take a few yen depending on the exchange rate.
Oh, Nathan.
And then Thorax, one of our Patreons, gave us the correct answer: Godzilla versus the Cosmic or Bionic Monster, aka Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla from 1974. Directed by Jun Fukuda, starring Masaaki Daimon, Kazuya Aoyama, Akihiko Hirata, Hiroshi Koizumi, Isao Zushi as Godzilla, and let's see, Kazunari Mori as Mechagodzilla, and Kenichi Kasumi as Anguirus and King Caesar.
Okay, so let's get down to it because I'm anxious to get into this conversation.
Yeah.
It is worth mentioning though, Travis, because this is actually the final Godzilla film directed by Jun Fukuda and scored by Mr. Sato.
Mm-hmm. Yep, Masaru Sato
Yes.
was the one who scored it. This was his last one. Yeah, it's very interesting. I'll go ahead and do the plot breakdown, a quick
Sure.
plot breakdown for this movie, and then we can get into our thoughts. When archaeologist Seiko Kaneshiro deciphers an ancient Okinawan prophecy foretelling a monster which will appear to destroy the world, Godzilla suddenly appears from the crater of Mount Fuji and goes on a rampage. However, Godzilla's friend Anguirus attacks him. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Where this Godzilla is actually an imposter. The real Godzilla soon arrives to challenge his double, exposing it as a robotic duplicate called Mechagodzilla. Mechagodzilla is under the control of the Black Hole Planet 3 aliens, who aim to use it to conquer the Earth. Psycho and her ally Kasuke now race to awaken the Okinawan guardian deity King Caesar to defeat Mechagodzilla, pursued by the sinister alien agent Yanagawa and shadowed by the mysterious Interpol agent Nambara. Is that how you say his name? Yeah, Nambara. So yeah, a lot of stuff going on. It's actually a lot of stuff going on in this movie. So, what are your opening thoughts on Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla?
Okay, so this film ranks probably top 5 in my Godzilla films. Not sure where it ranks overall kaiju films, including Godzilla, Gamera, and some others. I've not sat down and really thought about that part yet, but it's definitely top 5 of my Godzilla films because this is Mechagodzilla, it's Mechagodzilla. It's his debut film, and usually I'm one of those people who thinks that when a new kaiju makes their debut, usually the very first film that they make their debut in, then that's when they look the best. That's when they perform the best. Of course, this is all rubber suits and foam, so of course the suit deteriorates over time. But my God, this film is so much fun, and really, after learning what you and I both know about the film, it to me has a lot more deeper meaning when you watch this. For this, I watched it twice in the last couple of weeks, and there's always just these little nuggets of information that I was kind of picking up on after listening to some other great commentary that we'll mention later by some friends of ours. And but yeah, I mean, it's just fantastic. I love this movie, and maybe I'm just being like a super fanboy right now, but I really think that Mechagodzilla, I know a lot of folks put Terror of Mechagodzilla above this one. I don't know if that's fair, given the fact that it's fairly well written. The cast is really great, and there's cultural and historical significance behind why things are in this film, and it just makes for a really, really good experience.
Yeah. So my opening thoughts on this movie has never been one of my most beloved Godzilla movies.
Mm-hmm.
I always say, and I still stand by it, that I like every Godzilla movie in some way, in some form.
Right.
So there's not a single Godzilla movie that I just don't like, absolutely do not like.
Sure.
but this one does kind of rank low on my list. And not too long ago, I did put my list of in order of what I, at least currently how I feel about the movies, because things always change constantly. But I did put it on Letterboxd. I put the rankings of all 35 Godzilla films, and I was just sitting here while you were talking, counting down to see where this one was on the list, and it's number 19.
Oh, come on.
It's
Come
not.
on.
I mean, it's above things like, Godzilla versus Megalon. It's above things like Godzilla versus King Kong versus Godzilla.
Mhm.
It's above things like that. But I've never been a huge fan of this particular movie. Terror of Mechagodzilla. I'm one of those ones that Terror of Mechagodzilla definitely ranks a lot higher than this one. And I know that this is the premiere of Mechagodzilla. And I know that really says a lot, because the premiere of a kaiju is an important thing.
Mhm.
I even watching it this morning, I was like, I don't know. I don't rank this one as high as other ones. Like, when I go to my Godzilla collection and I just want to sit down and enjoy a Godzilla movie, not for reviewing for the podcast, not for any other reason, just to sit down and enjoy a Godzilla movie, Mechagodzilla, at least, this versus Mechagodzilla, is not one of the ones that I reach for.
Mhm. And that's fair. It's not one that I reach. It is, like I said, it is top 5 for me, but it's not one that I reach for very often. So it's a loose top 5, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Probably the one that I reach for the most. Oh man, that's probably got to be either Ghidorah, the 3-headed monster, or Monster Zero, honestly. So yeah, those are probably the 2 that I reach for the most often. If I'm going to watch a classic Showa film. Now there's others, in the Heisei and Millennium era, but we're only talking about Showa right now. So as far as Showa films go, Mechagodzilla is up there for me, but it's one that I don't reach for often. But after watching this last time and knowing what I know about the film now, I have a feeling that I'm probably going to be reaching for it more often.
Yeah, so let's get into some of the details and likes and dislikes about this movie.
Sure.
So let's just go ahead and talk about the elephant in the room, which is the another podcast, Kaiju Vision Radio, which our friend Nathan was on originally, along with another friend of the podcast, Brian. They did an episode on this, and they talked about the history of Okinawa, which is where this movie takes place.
Right.
Majority of it anyway. And it probably is the best place to go to for information on this film. It is probably the definitive podcast on this particular film. Yeah. Because it is so well done with so much information in there that I had no idea about. And doing a lot of the research on my own, finding out a lot of the stuff that I missed, when I was younger and didn't know about this stuff that now I see, like a lot of the exploration and references to Okinawan culture and religion and everything. It did heighten my appreciation for this film. So do you want to get into some of the things? Like I said, I do encourage people, go check out Kaiju Vision Radio. There's an old episode. It's from back in 2018, where they reviewed Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla. Check that out, because they do a much better job breaking down the actual history of Okinawa. But just as a brief overview, Okinawa, the islands that make up the Okinawa prefecture, they weren't part of Japan hundreds of years ago. They
Right.
had their own culture, their own people, their own dialect, everything. And then Imperial Japan came and basically took over and said, "You're now part of Japan." And there was a time period for a long time when Imperial Japan was trying to eliminate Okinawan culture. They were, trying to prevent people from speaking their language, from practicing their religion, from doing all that. They were basically waging a silent war
Mhm.
on Okinawan culture.
Well, it's not even. I don't even think, honestly. I don't. From what I've read and what I've heard and listened to about this movie and about sort of the history behind it and Okinawan culture, I wouldn't even really call it a silent war because, for example, um, Nathan talked about how in schools where they were trying to integrate schools between the Okinawan children and the Japanese children, and if a child spoke Okinawan, I guess that's what it's called. I can't really recall exactly what the name of the name of the dialect. Well, anyway, Okinawan dialect.
Mhm.
Um, if that child spoke Okinawan dialect, they had to wear this ridiculous, like I think they call it a dialect card or a dialect something, which is this thing that they put around their neck, and that child had to wear it until some other child spoke in the Okinawan dialect, and then that child passed the plate on to that child. And so basically at the end of the day, whomever child was unlucky enough to still have that thing around their neck got punished by the teacher. And it was this really cruel way for uh for the Japanese to try to basically eliminate the Okinawan culture from Japan, trying to make a distinction between the Tokyo dialect that most people spoke in that region, and then of course the dialect that was spoken on the island of Okinawa. And it was just really cruel things that they did to try to discriminate
Yeah. Which
against those folks.
Yeah, and which led to a lot of the Okinawan people kind of resenting and really rebelling against the Japanese authority.
Mhm.
But yeah, so they started rebelling against the Japanese rule up until the war, and then after the Second World War. Then after the Second World War, and after Japan surrendered to the United States decided to basically occupy Okinawa for really a long time. I mean, they occupied a lot of Japan, but especially in Okinawa, they were occupying that area for a long time. And it wasn't until 19
Mhm.
was it, let me see, it was 1971 was when America gave Okinawa back to Japan, which was kind of a bittersweet thing for the
Mhm.
Okinawans, because it's like, well, we're trading our new uh, oppressors with the old oppressors that we were already rebelling against because they were the ones that were oppressing us beforehand. So it's like we're not really getting there. The
Right.
Okinawans were getting the raw deal on all of it.
Right. And I think those negotiations had been going on since the late 60s too. I think it was like 1967 or 1968
Mhm.
until it finally happened under the Nixon administration.
Yeah. So all of that is happening in the world. And then Jun Fukuda and all of them decide to make a Godzilla film, and they set the Godzilla film in Okinawa, and they have a monster that is rooted directly into Okinawan culture with King Caesar, which we can talk about in just a second.
Sure.
And they have the Japanese monster,
Mhm.
Godzilla, fighting alongside the Okinawan monster of King Caesar,
Mhm.
fighting these evil invaders. And it's just kind of like, wow, how culturally significant and historically significant this film is, given the
Right.
time period and what was happening in the world.
Mhm. Yeah, it's
so good. Go
it's
ahead.
interesting. I'm sorry. It's interesting. I was just going to say that, you know, when Mechagodzilla first emerges, he emerges not in the form that we all know and love him in. He actually emerges in a form that has been lovingly called Fake Godzilla. So when he first emerges, he first comes out of Mount Fuji in Japan, and then slowly, you know, makes his way to, I want to say, he makes his way to Okinawa, to begin his assault. But one thing I think you and I were talking about earlier today was it was funny to me where, you know, Mechagodzilla was created in Japan in Mount Fuji. At least that's where he emerged from. And then here comes Godzilla to fight Mechagodzilla. And then, you know, the first round, like round one, goes to Mechagodzilla. You know, the battle happens at the oil refinery, which is a fantastic sequence because I can see why a lot of fans love that sequence, and I do too. But you know, after the battle, after, you know, Godzilla is wounded, and he's obviously wounded because there's blood in the water, he travels to Okinawa to gain power to help him fight a monster that emerged from Mount Fuji in Japan. So I'm not sure if that was purposeful symbolism, like, you know, the Japanese monster Godzilla going to Okinawa to get more power, to join forces with the Okinawa monster King Caesar, however you want to say it,
Right.
to fight a monster that emerged from Mount Fuji in Japan, who is seen as the evil invader in Mechagodzilla.
Yeah, it is really interesting. This movie has a lot more layers than what I thought when I was younger watching it, or even up until about a year ago. I did not know all of these details and all of this history that adds a lot of extra depth to this movie.
Yeah, it becomes even more prevalent when you see the old man, the old priest, begging the gods, begging King Shisa and the gods to punish Japan using Godzilla, who is a Japanese monster. So basically using their own creation to destroy their enemy, because they didn't know whether or not they were going to be able to awaken King Shisa.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's such an interesting movie. There's a lot of interesting things in it now that you know the history and the backstory. There's a lot of details in it that's really, really just interesting. One thing that I do really like is we talked about the fake Godzilla. I think that's a fun concept of having Mechagodzilla imitate and look like Godzilla and pretend to be Godzilla up until, you know, Anguirus, or as they call him in the movie, Anguinus.
Justice for Anguirus, because nobody can get that poor kaiju's name right.
Yeah, no, it's so bad, and justice for Anguinus, because man, did he get a raw deal in this movie. he got his butt handed to him.
Well, let me ask you, now that you brought that up, let me ask you, that first fight between Anguirus, I'm having to catch myself. The first fight between Anguirus and the fake Godzilla, obviously the fake Godzilla wins. Obviously Mechagodzilla wins. So are you in the camp of Anguirus died, or Anguirus was just injured and retreated?
I did pay attention to it in the movie, and it looked like he was still going and still moving after the attack from Mechagodzilla. So I'm in the camp of he survived and just retreated.
Sure. Yeah. Same here. I was, because it's sort of a lighthearted debate in the fandom about this movie, is whether or not Anguirus survived that battle, or if he died, if he just fell in a hole and died, pretty much. But we never see him again the whole movie. So
right.
I get why he was there, but it just felt like it almost felt like he was unnecessary to me.
Yeah.
In a way.
I mean, I get why the scenes, the fight is there, because you have to establish how dangerous Mechagodzilla is,
Right.
and having another monster fight him and lose, because you can't have Godzilla lose too badly because Godzilla's your hero.
Right.
So having another monster lose as badly as Anguirus did really establishes just how dangerous Mechagodzilla is. So the point of the scene I get, and I don't argue against the point of the scene or having the scene in there. What I don't like is just how brutal it got. Like, it seemed unnecessarily mean towards Anguirus. like I don't know if Jun Fukuda really likes Anguirus after seeing this movie.
No, I think it just was, you see, because at this point in Toho, at this point in like sort of the Godzilla mythos and Toho history, Anguirus has been seen as Godzilla's sidekick, as Godzilla's best friend, his BFF, if you will, and for him to lose to now Anguirus does not have, let me just say this, Anguirus does not have the best track record in these films, but I get why they put him in there, because it was basically saying, oh no, Godzilla's best friend is being attacked and defeated by this unknown enemy. And I think they even, or this sort of unknown enemy, and I think they even made reference to it later on, that Anguirus was calling out to Godzilla because Anguirus sensed something was wrong, which actually, it was weird how now I think you and I watched the international dub the second time, and the film opens up, and I cannot remember if it did this in the Japanese version. I think it does, but it opens up with this rainstorm, and Anguirus is the first kaiju you see within the first couple of minutes of the film, and Anguirus is just calling out to someone, and then you see Mount Fuji, or you see sorry, not Mount Fuji, but you see just this island explode with light, and you're like, oh my god, what's happening? What's going on? And I didn't quite understand it growing up and watching this film as maybe an 8 or 10-year-old kid, and I think I even mentioned it in my notes here that I thought it was weird how Godzilla had a different roar than what he had in the previous films. Like, he doesn't have that usual, that shrunk, that she-ronk, whatever. I'm not going to do it here, but he doesn't have that typical Godzilla sound to him. And I thought that was very jarring. And I was like, man, what's going on here? Because, at 10 years old, you're not able to kind of get some of these context clues, these complex context clues that this movie's throwing out to you.
Right. Yeah. That's why I think that the concept of a monster that's imitating and faking being Godzilla is a really neat concept, and I think it's weird that this is really the only film that's used in, because it's never been used again. None of the other Mechagodzillas ever pretend to be, regular Godzilla. No other monster ever imitates Godzilla like that. And I think that would be a really neat concept to use again in a film, having a monster that pretends to be Godzilla, and until it's revealed that it's not Godzilla. I think that's a neat thing.
We have those cases of mistaken identity before in these films, like Frankenstein versus Baragon is a good example, because there for a while, as Baragon is tearing up the countryside, everyone thinks it's Frank.
Right.
So, but you're right. The actual, like, I would say not stunt double, but the actual mimicked clone of the protagonist, Godzilla, has not been done since. And I think it is an interesting concept. That I really hope that if the rumors are true, they play around with in Godzilla versus Kong.
Yeah, that would be interesting. It'd be interesting to see it used again. Something else that I really liked that I wanted to point out, the filmmaking, filmmaking side of things. there are some transition shots that I really like in this. And if I remember right, on Monsters vs. Men, our friends over at Monsters vs. Men podcast, they talked about the transition shots and how that was actually a staple of Honda. Honda was known for using transition shots the way that they're used in this movie, but this is Jun Fukuda that's doing this. But there were times when there would be like they would zoom in on something and then zoom out on something, and it was such a great transition scene to take you from one point to another in the story without really breaking the flow of it. And so I just wanted to point out that, as we talk a lot about the monsters and the monster fights and things like that, but we don't really go into a lot of the detail about the actual artistry of the filmmaking, and that to me, just stood out in this film.
Yeah, and there's a lot of interesting shots that of one in particular that's extremely famous. It has become sort of a trope of the whole of the Mechagodzilla of any Mechagodzilla. Anytime there's a Mechagodzilla, this shot is used. It's that floor level, that full like slow reveal from the floor level up, and that actually was that was taken from a film from the 60s, King Kong Escapes. It was the first in that kind of panning from the floor up was introduced then when Mechanicong, whom Mechagodzilla was inspired by, was first used.
Yeah, that it's interesting. Again, we talked about it in our King Kong Escapes episode that when you're a kid and you're a fan of Godzilla, Mechagodzilla, and then if you find out about Mechanicong later, you're kind of like, oh, well, they just ripped off Mechagodzilla, but actually it's the other way around. Mechanicong came first, Mechagodzilla was second, was directly inspired by Mechanicong. Something that Mechanicong doesn't have, though, is the weaponry that Mechagodzilla has. This thing is loaded to the tooth with all kinds of weapons, which makes that fight, anytime Mechagodzilla fights, especially during the fights with King Shiza and Godzilla, it is just such an epic scene seeing him fight, because he just especially when he like full on releases everything, just a barrage of lasers and torpedoes and rockets and just everything that he has. Oh man, it's so crazy. I love watching Mechagodzilla fight.
Yeah, and it's considered, Mechagodzilla. It's why Mechagodzilla is considered and they flip-flop between either King Ghidorah and Mechagodzilla as Godzilla's most challenging enemy. Because of the fact that he, like you said, he is literally armed to the teeth, where he's got missiles as tongue. He's got missiles in his mouth. He's got missiles in his fingers, missiles in his toes, missiles in his kneecaps. Yep. He's got kneecap missiles of all things. A belly ray gun that shoots from his sort of abdomen region. He's got this eye beam that he can shoot out, this colorful rainbow colored eye beam, which looks fantastic during that night scene at the oil refinery. And yeah, he is just armed to the teeth, except for his back. He can spin his head around and create a force field, so I guess that counts. But as far as shooting things from his back, it's iffy. He can sort of turn his head around and shoot in different directions. Like, I think there's one shot in the film where it's Godzilla on one side, King Shisa on the other side, and Mechagodzilla has his finger missiles and his toe missiles aimed at Godzilla, and his face missiles and his face beam aimed at King Shisa. And it's just really interesting that they armed this specific kaiju, or how much artillery they put on this specific kaiju. And I think that's one of the reasons why Mechagodzilla still remains, especially this version of Mechagodzilla still remains the favorite for so many fans. Yeah,
definitely. So we've talked a lot about the good things in this movie, and there are a lot of great things in this movie. let's talk about some dislikes. What are some things you didn't like in this movie?
Well, aside from Justice for Anguirus, or Justice for Anguinus is probably what we should say, because people kept screwing up his name at least in the international dub. Fake Godzilla looks really bad. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It does look really bad. I get it that they had to have some kind of differences between the real Godzilla and the fake Godzilla, because in the first few sequences when we first see Mechagodzilla as Godzilla, they're using the actual Godzilla suit. They're not, it's not a brand new suit. It's the same suit, except for they just changed the roar and he moves a little bit more mechanical like. Anyway, I know that I'm going to get you on board with me on this and say the 3.5 minutes it took to get past the King Shisa song.
Okay. One of the reasons why this movie does not sit higher up on my list of Godzilla movies is that King Shisa song. It drives me insane.
Right.
It drives me insane. And it's not that having singing parts in Godzilla movies bothers me, because I one of my favorite Godzilla movies of all time is Mothra versus Godzilla, and that of course has the Mothra song in it. I just, when you compare the King Shisa song with other songs that we have sung in Godzilla movies, maybe minus the Jet Jaguar song, it just doesn't. It's not good to me. It's not as good. And to me, it actually really annoys me and gets on my nerves. And I remember watching it and I was like, there's a point in the song where it kind of ends. And I'm like, oh, this wasn't as bad as I remember. And then it picks back up again. And I'm like, oh, okay. It's still going.
It clearly ends. It clearly has an end point right there. But then she just starts all over. But I will agree with what Nathan said during his episode of KVR, where they drug it out to sort of create this. They helped create this suspenseful moment, because as she's singing, it cuts back and forth between her and Mechagodzilla approaching. And all the while I'm sitting there thinking, why doesn't Mechagodzilla just fire a missile and blow up the entire beach? And that would just kind of nip that in the bud now, wouldn't it? But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, it was there to create some suspense. It was there to, and the girl that was actually singing the song, the way the plot goes, King Shisa will only respond to, or can only be awakened by a member of the Azumi royal family. So I get why the song was so long. It's there to create suspense. I get why the song was put in there, period, because, the actress playing the priestess, she's a member of the Azumi royal family, and it's just part of the mythology that sort of surrounds, Shisa statues in general. So I get why it's there.
Yeah, it ties back into the Okinawan culture and everything. So yeah, I get it. And I don't want to be culturally insensitive towards it, but just that particular song, the way that it's used and the way it's done in the movie just does not hit with me the way that other songs in Godzilla movies do.
No, I think honestly, I'm gonna kind of go against the grain on this one and say I think it's used well in the movie. I think that where it's placed in the film and why it's there and how it's used is fine. I think it fits the tone. It fits the overall plot. It just goes on for too long. So if it was only like one verse, if it was only the first verse, it was only the one verse or the one go around of it, and then bam, King Shisa awakens. I think it'd be fine. But let me ask you this: aside from the song itself, as a kaiju, what are your thoughts on King Shisa or King Caesar?
I have not made it any secret that I do not like the King Shisa design. I mean, the design, the idea behind it is cool. Like the idea of this Shiza statue, which is where the name comes from, King Shiza, because he's a Shiza statue, come to life, is interesting. And I like that idea. I don't like the way it looks when it's executed. I think that the monster looks weird to me. He looks like he has like dead animals just draped across his body. And I've never been a fan of King Shiza the way he looks.
Right. Okay. That's fair.
What are your thoughts on King Shiza?
I don't mind King Shiza. Now, I don't mind this version of King Shiza. Now, the really weird version that we saw in Final Wars, I don't care for that version.
With the gold bra?
Yeah, with the gold Princess Leia bra. That one. But no, I really don't mind him. In fact, I think he's for what he was supposed to be. He was supposed to represent a Shiza statue, the protector of the Okinawan people. For what he was supposed to be, I think he's executed well. I think he is well executed. In fact, rewatching this movie, I've gained sort of a more. I was sort of in your camp, Travis, where I didn't really care much for King Caesar, King Shiza, whatever you call him, and I didn't care for him. But after watching this movie and after knowing what I know now about this film, and this is sort of a trend, I feel like what we're talking about here, what we've learned about this film has made us appreciate it more. I appreciate King Shiza more now that I know what I know about this film. And I don't mind the design too much. It's unique. He stands out among all the other kaiju, all the other reptilian, dragon, dinosaur, flying dinosaur kaiju that are out there. I don't mind it too much. And the way he's implemented. And my big gripe with King Shiza is he doesn't have a whole lot in the way of powers and abilities. Now he can reflect attacks. He can't reflect missiles, obviously, and Mechagodzilla has a lot of those, but he can reflect Mechagodzilla's beam. He can reflect his heat ray with his eye.
Right.
And I think that's hinted to when King Shiza is first awakened, because when the Shiza statue is placed on the pedestal at sunset, and the ruby, his eyes are rubies and they glow and they shoot this red beam from them and hollow out the mountain, revealing King Shiza for the first time. It's interesting that they carried that ability over to the actual kaiju. And I actually don't mind the kaiju too much. I like the fact that he's more hand-to-hand combat. He's not necessarily just a kaiju that sits back and does long distance attacks. So this is unlike anything we've seen. I mean, we've seen a lot of hand-to-hand combat, but we see a lot more hand-to-hand combat, I feel like, in this film, because when he first encounters Mechagodzilla, he gets down and dirty with Mechagodzilla for sure. Like in one sequence, he's trying to bite the hand off of Mechagodzilla. It's very animalistic, and I loved it.
Yeah. I do think that the introduction of Shiza, him being inside this mountain that gets exposed and he's just there hibernating, I think that's really interesting. And I guess my dislike of King Caesar has softened since learning a lot about the story and the history behind it and where his inspiration came from. I don't like the execution. I think that he's just a weird looking monster to me. I don't know. I've never really liked the design that much, but I do appreciate it a little bit more since
That's
learning
fair.
some of the context of it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, so going with dislikes, I have mixed feelings about Godzilla using magnetic powers
Yeah.
at the end. Now, I'm not against Godzilla having new and interesting powers. Like, that's fine. If he invents new powers each movie, basically that's fine. But there's something about him getting the magnetic powers, and especially the way he does it, because I get that it was like a throwback to the what was it, Son of Godzilla, or not Son of Godzilla, Godzilla versus the Sea Monster,
Okay.
where lightning was used to wake him up, and which was only used because it was supposed to be Frankenstein, then was supposed to be King Kong, then was changed to Godzilla. So, you know, it's like the only reason that scene was even in that movie was because it was never changed when it was originally supposed to be a different monster. And then they just carried that idea of Godzilla using lightning to power up over in this film. But just, I don't know. I don't like the magnetic powers that he just suddenly got at the end.
Yeah, I think it plays well with what we had seen throughout the 70s and through the 70s, and you know, the Godzilla franchise during that decade was you saw what people referred to as superhero Godzilla. Started with what was the first 70s film? Oh, Godzilla versus Gigan. It started sort of there. Although I will argue that it sort of even started even in '68 with Destroy All Monsters, but it became very prevalent in the 70s with Godzilla versus Gigan, and then it got turned up to 11 in Godzilla versus Hedorah when Godzilla gained the ability to fly, which is funny. And then of course Godzilla versus Megalon when he teams up with Jet Jaguar. And has more of an anthropomorphic, if I can talk today, sort of look and feel to his character. You know, the infamous drop kick scene comes to mind when you can't talk about Godzilla versus Megalon unless you mention the infamous drop kick scene, and I'll just leave it at that. But it doesn't bother me that he got a new power, given the fact that it's sort of a trope of the superhero genre anyway, where when you're up against an enemy that you've really never experienced before, who is much more powerful than you anticipate, it's not uncommon for superheroes to develop or discover a brand new ability that they can tap into to defeat their enemy. So it doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah, I get it. It's just magnetic powers just seem so weird for Godzilla to have, but it's one of the small things that it does. It's a dislike, but it's not enough to break the entire movie for me. Like I can go along with the ride.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like, okay, Godzilla's magnetic all of a sudden. That's fine. I can go along with the ride. Something else that I can just kind of go along with the ride is the fact that they just had a duplicate of the Shiza statue that looks exactly like the real thing. It was just so weird that this because one of the simians, one of the aliens, comes to steal the Shiza statue, and the main hero character goes after him and fights him off and everything, and he ends up getting shot and goes overboard with the statue. And it's like, oh no, what's gonna happen? We lost the statue. And then the next scene is, oh, here's the statue. That one was just a decoy. Boop a boop. Let's move on. And it's like, what?
That was one of those plot holes that I wish had a little bit more explanation, and maybe they did explain it and I just missed it, because you know I'm human and we do miss stuff no matter how many times we've seen these movies. But yeah, that bugged me too. That there was really it just kind of came out of left field, honestly. And
it's never really talked about from then on. It's just like, oh, boop a boop. Let's move on. Yeah, you know, it's just like, okay, whatever. But that whole scene, that whole sequence, did give me one of my favorite moments in the film, which is when the alien gets attacked and half his face changes back into the ape face, and half of it changes or stays in the human form. That shot was really well done, even for the 1970s, even for the low budget, because this movie was relatively low budget compared to other Godzilla films in the past. that shot was so well done, and the special effects of having it half human, half alien was just so good. So I had to give a shout out to that scene because that was just a really well done scene.
So I'm really surprised that we've went this entire conversation and we've really not even touched on sort of the simian supreme leader and just how I believe that he's a very well done villain. He's very Americanized, though. I thought he was very Bond villain like with his with his cigar and his sort of smug demeanor and his cognac glass with it in his little snifter. And he was very Bond like, and I think that's one of the reasons why I like this film. I like spy movies. So this film sort of feels like that to me. But what did you think about his character, and what did you think about sort of just as a whole, what did you think about the antagonist, the Simians, anyway?
I really liked his character. I really liked, like you said, just the whole James Bond kind of. He has this like suave, personality to him. You know,
Right,
he's
yeah.
so cool and so debonair, for being the villain. You know, and I like that. I do enjoy the Simians. For the most part, they serve their purpose in this movie. I like them more in Terror than I do in this movie.
Okay.
I don't know why. I do. But I do, like you said, I do like this kind of suave, debonair aura that the villain the supreme leader was putting out in this movie. I wanted to ask you, actually, so when it comes to the alien supreme leaders, or you know, the alien invaders, where do you rank this on the alien invader Godzilla's list? Because we've got the Exilians from Monster Zero.
Right.
We've got the space roaches from Gigan. You've got
the Disco Space Nuns from Destroy All Monsters.
Disco Space Nuns from Destroy All Monsters. And then if you get into the Heisei and Millennium eras, there's some more. But where would you rank these on the list?
I'm going to say that, you know, the Exilians from Monster Zero have always been the top for me as far as the invaders. I feel like they did it the best. And I'm going to go ahead and put the Simians right behind them at probably spot number 2, with the roaches being dead last. I like the Disco Space Nuns more so than I like the roaches, which I think that well,
I love the space roaches.
I don't really
I
don't like bugs.
Okay. Well, the idea, it is kind of a silly concept, but I mean, it also is a silly movie.
Right. Yeah.
But the actor, the one actor, I can't remember his name, who plays one of the space roaches in that movie is so good, though. He's so good. He's probably one of the hammiest and best actors. He is chewing every bit of scenery that he is in, and I love it. So I always put them higher up on the list. I'm going to count the I know they don't technically count, but I'm going to count the Cetopians from Megalon and put them at the bottom of the list because I don't really care for them. But yeah, the Disco Space Nuns, I don't really care for them either. So the Simians I put is kind of like in the middle because I do really like the Exilians.
Sure.
Especially when they come back and they're reinterpreted in Final Wars. I really like the crazy anime Super Saiyan Exilian.
Yeah, he's obviously a favorite among the fan base. But for me, I'm going to go ahead and go with the original Exilians from Invasion of the Astro Monster, and then put the Simians as a close second.
Yeah, that's fair enough. You talked about the James Bond feel of this movie. That's one of the things that I found myself while watching this movie which I didn't as a kid, because as a kid I'm more interested in the monsters. But in this movie, or this time around, when watching this movie, I actually was very interested in the human side of things, and was very wrapped up in that story more than I was the actual monster fights.
Right.
And so I was very surprised by how much I enjoyed the human element in this movie.
Let me ask you, what did you think of Harada's performance in this one? Because, well, I'll ask you first, and then I'll kind of go into my thoughts. So, what did you think of his performance in this film?
I think he did a great job. I think, he has this. I mean, this isn't his first time playing a scientist. So we're talking about Akihiko Harada, who played Dr. Serizawa in the original Godzilla.
Right.
Has come back to play the geology professor or archaeology professor, some kind of professor in this movie, and he played a great professor, because he tends to play that a lot in these movies. But yeah, I really liked it. I think that he portrayed the conflict that this professor was supposed to have, because he's helping the aliens, but he knows he shouldn't, but at the same time he's doing it for the love of his daughter.
Right.
And so you do see the conflict in him. So I definitely think that his performance was good, and he really did a great job in this movie.
Yeah, and the story sort of gets the story like that sort of gets rehashed in Terror of Mechagodzilla with Dr. Mifune and Katsura.
Right.
So I mean, it's not the most original trope of this type of film, but I really enjoyed his performance too. And I think it was a really, considering this is the 20th anniversary of Godzilla, it was a really nice way to kind of bring it, or to, in a way, bring it full circle, because it is the 20th anniversary. Because at this time, I don't know if Terror of Mechagodzilla had already been planned, or if they were kind of banking on this being the final film. I'll have to go back and kind of research the history behind the Showa era and what was going on at this time. But I want to say that Terror of Mechagodzilla had not even been planned yet at this point, that this was supposed to be the final film of the Showa era, and probably the final Godzilla film, period, because at the time, Godzilla and Kaiju movies were not doing great at the box office.
Right. Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that.
I'll have to go back and find some information on that. I want to say that Terror of Mechagodzilla had not been planned yet at this point, and they were just kind of waiting on the success of this film to go forward with another film. But I'm not 100% sure on that, so I'll have to find that out.
Yeah. We can go on and on about this movie, because there are plenty of great things in this movie. There's plenty of things to praise. I mean, we didn't even get into the score. Like we said, it was the first, or not the first, but the last time that it was scored by whatchamacallit? I lost his name.
Sato.
Sato Masaru.
Yes.
That we didn't even get into that really, but we need to move on.
Sure.
So let's share a few fun facts here real quick. So one of the fun facts that stood out to me was the cavern in which the third planet aliens, the aliens in this movie, have their secret base, is the Gyokusindo cave in Okinawa. It's a real cave that was discovered in 1967, so had not been long discovered when they filmed this movie. Okay. And it's also a tourist attraction.
Okay, good.
There. And another thing that stood out to me was this was the first Godzilla film in its original Japanese version to finally give on-screen credit to the suit actors.
Oh, okay, good, great.
Because up until that point, the suit actors did not receive on-screen, or they received on-screen credit, but it was just as regular cast members. They never got the recognition of being the actor portraying, like, so it was, they were given credit as the monster, the character that they were portraying. That had not been done before.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I thought they had always done that up to that point, but of course, whoever pays attention to the credits.
Right. Yeah. It's hard, and that's something that I've been wanting to do whenever we do our cast breakdown, is to make sure to include the suit actors, because they are an important part of the movie. You could say one of the most important parts, because without them, we wouldn't have the monsters that we love so much. So, yeah, other than that, and then I do have a little bit in here about the fake Godzilla suit that was used as the disguised Mechagodzilla. It was originally just a simple head water prop used in Godzilla versus Megalon.
Okay.
So when Godzilla swam in the water, he was following Jet Jaguar in that movie. The head prop was attached to a whole new suit.
Okay.
And then they added the exposed metallic parts and stuff to him to make him look like the fake Godzilla that's in the movie. This suit was also used in the closing shot of Godzilla swimming out to sea at the end of Terror of Mechagodzilla 2. But then they also made a completely new third suit. So there was 3 Godzilla suits used in this movie, and it was the third suit was exclusively used for the water scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And oh boy, is it noticeable when Godzilla pops up out of the water, because it does not look great.
I know we're not talking about Terror of Mechagodzilla here, but I remember that closing scene of the Showa era when kind of Godzilla roars and he looks like he kind of waves at the camera. I always wondered why they went with that particular suit to say farewell with, because if they thought they weren't going to be doing any more films, why not use the actual suit, unless it was still undecided whether that would be the final film or not. So they didn't want to waste a perfectly good suit on a water shot like that. So I don't know. That's interesting, but you can obviously tell that 3 different suits were made or were used in this film. It's actually kind of funny, because the scenes gotta go back and forth between the fake Godzilla suit and the real Godzilla suit in some of the battle scenes, and it's just kind of weird and funny. And I know that the fake Godzilla suit has become sort of this secret fan favorite, because it is so different, and you can recognize it from any other suit in the Showa era. But you can definitely tell that thing was used in water because of just how swollen the face looks.
Oh yeah, for sure. But with it being used for a fake Godzilla, it's fine, because this Godzilla is not meant to look exactly like Godzilla. He's meant to look weird. The one that gets me the most is when they cut to the actual Godzilla coming out of the water, and they use that third suit, and that third suit looks so terrible compared to the actual hero suit of Godzilla. That's the one that stands out to me the most. But anyway, it's just a funny little thing.
It is.
Was there any other fun facts that you wanted to share?
No. I feel like, before we get into our Godzuki score, I do have to say that out of all of the Godzilla films in the Showa era, this has to be my favorite score of any Showa era Godzilla movie. I just love that big band kind of really hard jazz feel to it. I love it so much, and it's I would feel terrible if I did not mention that at least one time during this conversation.
Yeah, I can't believe that you put this above a Ifukube.
It's close. I love Ifukube. I love an Ifukube score, especially. I think it was Frankenstein versus Baragon, or maybe even the Gargantua's score that I really love. But there's just something really unique about this score that stands out among them all. That that it just makes it. It just makes it for me. It just makes this movie for me. Just especially that song when Mechagodzilla is first revealed, just that dun 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 dun. Yeah, that really fast jazz. Oh, I love it. So much.
Yeah, that funky like
Yeah.
70s jazz. Yeah, it's really good. It is good. Like I said, it is something that we didn't really mention a whole lot, but it is a highlight from the film.
Oh, for sure.
So let's get into our Godzuki scores. For anybody who's new to the podcast, Godzuki is our yardstick that we use for measuring these movies. Godzuki being the bumbling nephew from the Godzilla's nephew from the Hanna-Barbera cartoon of the 70s, and we pay homage to the great Godzuki by using him to measure these films. So, Michael, out of 5 Godzukis, what would you rate Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla?
An easy 4.5.
Easy
4.5 all day long. 4.5 Godzukis. I would have given it 5 if it was not for just some certain plot holes that I wish were tidied up, but such is life.
Because I'm easy
like Sunday morning.
Sunday morning.
Okay. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
So when I was watching this movie this morning, I put the score at a 3 out of 5 Godzukis because I was tired and I was grumpy. Since taking a nap and thinking about it.
I'm so sorry.
Since taking a nap, I have thought about it, and I've increased my score to a 4 out of 5 Godzukis.
That's a little bit more respectable, Travis.
Yeah, because the movie is really good. I don't want to take away from it. It is really good.
Mm-hmm.
It's not my favorite Godzilla movie. It's not one that I grab or gravitate to, but I do enjoy it, and it does deserve a higher rating than what I gave it when I was tired and grumpy and just wanting the movie to end so I could take a nap.
Okay.
So we can just jump straight into final thoughts. So what are your final thoughts on Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla?
Oh man, I feel like if anyone has listened to this and not taken away that I love this movie, I don't know what they've been listening to for the last hour and a half. So, but yeah, I love this movie. But really quickly before I kind of get into my final thoughts, I do have to say, I do have to give a couple of references that sort of we pulled some of this information from, because I just want to give proper accreditation. I think we mentioned it before in the podcast, Travis, where we pulled some of the information about like Okinawa and the history there from a podcast that we listened to. I think it's a Kaiju Vision Radio episode 19, where Nathan and Brian talk about Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla from 1974, which is, to me, if you want a good breakdown of the film and you want to know a little bit of history and some of the situations that were the cultural situation that was kind of going on at the time, the socio-political side of it. If you want to know a little bit of that and dive super deep into it, I say go listen to episode 19 of Kaiju Vision Radio, because that episode does a fantastic job. Nathan and his co-host do a fantastic job of breaking down this film from that context. Also, I just want to give a quick reference to a magazine or a website that I use sometimes for information called mykaiju.com. Specifically, the My Kaiju magazine, volume 2. They had a big spread about Showa films, specifically Mechagodzilla and Terror of Mechagodzilla, which is where I pulled a lot of this information from. But like I said earlier, although many rank Terror of Mechagodzilla above the original Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla, this actually ranks top 5 in my list of Godzilla films. It's fantasy, science fiction, spy genre, historical and cultural significance, all combined, I feel like, to create a film that's just fantastic and timeless. And after researching a little bit of the history, around surrounding this film and surrounding sort of the Okinawan people and what was happening at that time, I have grown to have a deeper appreciation for what Fukuda was trying to accomplish with this one.
Yeah, definitely. My final thoughts. I said it during Kaiju Quarantine at one point when I was doing just like a Q&A section in between the films. But to me, the best films, or at least the most interesting Godzilla films, are when Godzilla stands for something.
Mhm.
Like he represents something. And now what he represents can change because, you know, in 54, he represented the anxiety and fear of nuclear power and nuclear weapons. In the late Showa period, he represented kind of the hero defending the Earth.
Sure.
And the fact that in this, so much of this film, Godzilla and King Shiza represent the relationship between Okinawa and mainland Japan or the rest of Japan
Mhm.
is really interesting and makes this movie a standout for that reason.
Right.
It's still personally not one of my favorite Godzilla movies, but it is definitely a well done movie. It's a lot of fun to watch, and if you haven't watched it, if you're new to Godzilla, new to Kaiju, because this podcast I like to think appeals to people who are not just long-term fans, but new fans as well, or new to the genre. If you haven't watched this movie, watch it with that context of the socio-political and the history, and realize what Godzilla and King Shiza represent, and it really is just a must watch. It's a must watch. So yeah, again, it's still not one of my favorites personally, but it is a lot of fun and it's a must watch.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, I 1000% agree with you.
Yeah. So let's now get into the mailbag.
Woo!
And I have a new theme song for the mailbag that I'm going to drop in here too.
What's in the mail today?
So we got a letter, an email from my best friend in the whole world, Kershaw. I keep saying that every time I mention him, but he sent us an email. He sent us 2 questions. I'm only going to bring up one question this week, and then I'll bring up the next question another week. So, you know, I'm just going to cover Kershaw. If you're listening, I'm just covering the first question, or one of the questions that you sent. Then the second one will cover another week. But his email says, "Hey guys, long-time listener, first-time caller." He said, "I always wanted to say that."
Well, okay.
He said, "I recently rewatched Destroy All Monsters and saw Gorosaurus burrow to attack Paris, only for Baragon to be credited for it. Then when all the monsters were no longer under control of the Kilax and fought Ghidorah, Baragon stayed on the sideline. I just had to shout, 'Justice for Baragon!' Hashtag justice for Baragon." The question he asks us, the second question that he asked us that I'm referencing this time around is geared more towards you, Michael.
Oh, okay.
Because it pertains to figures.
Oh, okay.
The question is, what are good Mechagodzilla, specifically the first Mechagodzilla and the third Mechagodzilla Kiryu figures that someone on a budget can get? He says, "Thank you for pumping out the content during these times. I know it definitely helped me out during my commute to and from work the past few months. Everyone stay safe. Hashtag justice for Waluigi," which is a reference from way on back early on the podcast, because I said that Baragon is the Waluigi of the Toho universe, for anybody who plays Smash Bros. And then he said, hashtag Baragon for Smash.
Travis's best friend in the whole wide world, Kershaw. Honestly, okay, so I read this question beforehand, so I tried to gather up some information for you, and I think Travis may be sending that your way. But I found a few links on Amazon and some things. I don't. When people ask me recommendations on a budget, I never know what people's budgets are, so I get real hesitant on recommending things. So I took this from the perspective of someone who's kind of getting into collecting, who just wants to spend anywhere between $25 to say $50 USD, give or take. So I found a few. I found a few links on Amazon. The first one is a Bandai Godzilla movie monster series, Mechagodzilla. It's the heavily armed edition. It's the heavily armed Kiryu edition from 2003. Right now the price is setting around $27.93, so not too bad. It's about an 8-inch figure, so it's a pretty good size. Probably the second one that I found is a 6-inch vinyl Bandai Mechagodzilla, 1974. And that's setting at anywhere. It's setting. It looks like prices are around $28 to $41 USD. And then there's some others I found out there. There's another Kiryu version. There's another Kiryu by Band Presto, which is another vinyl figure maker. I think I want to say they're out of Korea, maybe. I'm not 100% sure about that. And he's a 10-inch figure. You can find him on Amazon I think it looks like it's dropped down in price to around $19.49. But also I kind of just want to recommend, if you're on Facebook, getting involved in some of the collectors groups on Facebook, because you'll be able to interact with other collectors. And there's a lot of times when collectors will post things for sale and they're not crazy prices. A lot of these guys and girls, a lot of these ladies and gentlemen are selling things at sort of retail, sort of what they purchase them for. So they're normally just going to say, hey, I'm going to post this online. I just want to pass it on for what I paid for it, and then kind of move on. So a couple of groups that I would probably try to join is the first one is the Godzilla Collectors group on Facebook. It's pretty easily, you can find that one pretty easily. It's got around 4,000 or so members involved with it. And also the X Plus Collectors Club, if you're looking to get into something a little bit more high end like X Plus and Premium Bandai and some others. So those are my recommendations. If you want something a little bit more specific, you can always get in touch with me over social media. The Kaiju Groupie, you can get in touch with me over Twitter. You can get in touch with me over Instagram. And Travis has my email address, so you can always email me personally, and I can give you some recommendations there. So yeah, I hope that helps. Best friend in the whole wide world, Kershaw, and happy collecting.
Yeah, and thank you for emailing us, Kershaw, because we always enjoy getting mailbag. We replaced the mailbag segment with Kaiju Clash last week or week before because we were running low on emails, and then as soon as we do that, Kershaw sends an email. So
it always happens.
Yeah, so we're going to next week pick up on Kaiju Clash. So for anybody who listened to Kaiju Clash a couple of weeks ago, if you didn't listen to last week's episode, let me give a quick rundown of the results from that too, because I just thought about that. We need to do that. Hashtag justice for Baragon, because he won. I think a lot of it did have to do with the fact that Baragon is a more popular monster, right. Toho is a more popular production company, whereas Godzilla is a more popular franchise, whereas Barugon and Gamera is not as popular. The comments section on Facebook and the comments that I got on Twitter during the poll show that a lot of people did put a lot of thought into it, and the ones that put thought into it still went with Barugon, so sided more with you, Michael, but the poll still ended up coming up on both Facebook and Twitter with Baragon in the lead and won. So
I don't trust the polls anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So next week we're going to have a brand new Kaiju Clash that we're going to
All right.
do. So everybody look forward to that, and I promise it will be much better researched, and I will be with it more next week.
And I can promise
to be able to do
that
it.
Travis will lose. He will lose this time.
Probably, and probably for the same reason that you lost this last one, because the monster you have is more popular.
Well, no, I don't know about that. I don't want to give it away, but I don't know about that, because the kaiju that you're going to be representing, Travis, that you're going to be advocating for. I mean, I will say this: she is very, very popular.
Yeah, she is, but I don't know. Yeah, we'll have to see. But other than that, the only other thing that I want to do is ask the trivia question that leads us to next week's episode. Now, we have finished Mech Month. We are out of Mech Month, and it was a fun time. We covered comic books. We covered a TV show. We covered, of course, one of the most famous mech from the kaiju genre, Mechagodzilla. Now we're moving into June. June is our Under the Sea month. So it's all going to be sea monsters and sea monster themed movies. So keep that in mind when you're answering this trivia question. The trivia question for next week is: what independent kaiju film features a battle between a sea monster and a real-life Japanese World War II battleship?
Okay.
Are we watching a kaiju documentary?
I don't know. Could it? I want to say that my favorite actor, Jeff, is going to be in this one.
Yeah, Jeff. Oh, we're going to have to talk about Jeff.
Oh, we'll definitely talk about Jeff. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this upcoming month of Under the Sea Kaiju, because one of the episodes we're going to have a couple of guests that are to be announced.
Yeah, I need to message them and remind them. It's like, hey, you know that the episode you're supposed to be on is coming up.
Yep.
You need.
And they're two great men, and they talk about a lot of monsters. So
yeah. So we're looking forward to it. So if you want to answer that trivia question, or if you want to send an email, make sure to do that. Kaju Weekly at gmail.com or on Twitter at Kaju Weekly. You can do that either way. You can reach out to us. So yeah, we want to thank everyone for listening this week. We know this one's probably a pretty long one because we had a lot to cover. But if you want to follow the podcast on social media, again, we are at Kaiju Weekly on Twitter and at Kaiju Weekly Pod on Instagram. You can subscribe to the Kaiju Weekly YouTube channel for all the latest episodes and clips from older episodes. Michael is taking care of that for us. So if something's not on there, blame him. You can send questions, comments, or answers to trivia questions to our email, kaijuweekly@gmail.com. You can also find us at the Kaiju Groupie Facebook group. That is a Facebook group that was started by Michael and is run by Michael and a lot of other admins, and they are a great place for kaiju fans. There's not the toxicity that you get in a lot of other fan groups, and it's just a lot of great fun. Also, follow Michael at Kaiju Groupie 54 on Twitter and the Kaiju Groupie on Instagram. And we also want to say a big thank you to Brian, Shijir, and Thorax for supporting us on Patreon. If you want to support us on Patreon, you can do that at patreon.com/Kaiju Weekly Pod. And so that's everything. So until next week, I'm going to say, help control the giant robot population. Have your Mechagodzillas spayed or neutered.
Bye, guys. Have a great week.
Bye. Should have went with King Shiza. He looks more like a dog. It would make more sense for him to be neutered.
It's true. We can add that to the B-roll. Let's do that as a B-roll.